The word henchman derives from the German word Hengst, which referred to a male horse. Originally, a henchman was a servant who walked alongside the king or nobleman while he rode his horse.
By Shakespeare's day, henchmen had come to refer more generally to boys and young men from noble families serving as attendants to the king or to other high-ranking lords.
Here, Oberon, king of the fairies, is hoping to have the changeling boy as one of his attendants, as his henchman.
It was only in the 20th century that the word henchman took on its modern negative meaning of someone who unquestionably follows his leader in carrying out violent or criminal acts.